anything if you guys don't be quiet.
Sorry.
2.
And 6.
Yes, and 6. Yes. We'll do those 3 in a second.
Okay.
So for number 2, we have to get P by itself. So you can do that a couple different ways. You could subtract 57 to both sides. Was that 90?
Yeah.
90. Divide both sides by -1. Remember that with all of your multi-step equations, you can put your answer back in for your variable and see if the sides match. Questions on 2? Or you have 2 fractions that equal each other, so you're going to cross multiply. You have a negative, so make only one of the numbers negative. You choose. Let's say I did -9. And then we'd be multiplying n plus 4 plus 6. Then equals 12 n plus 6. Whether you distribute this as you write it or write it and then distribute is up to you. Then distribute. We have -9n minus 36 equals 12n plus 72. Then you have a choice of what you want to move. Does not matter. Your goal is to get the variables on one side, constants on the other. So let's say we move 36 by adding. We could also subtract 12n to the other side. So we have -21n equals 108. And then divide. How much you got? It's a fraction or a decimal.
-5.23, and it just keeps going.
It should be 0.14.
Yeah, 5.1428. 57 keeps going.
Or you can put it in as a fraction. Alpha y equals, and it'll simplify it for you. You can write your answer in either or. -36 over 7. That was all supposed to be boxed together. What questions do we have on that one? Ethan, make sure you're writing this down. Maya, make sure you're writing this down. Right? 6, it's basically already in this stage. You just have to distribute, combine the terms. So here we can combine both of these, get 3m. Here we have to distribute. So -m minus 2 plus 2 minus 4m.
But then, yeah, like what confused me with this one was after you did all that, you just get not negative, 3m equals -5. And then where do you,
So your goal is still to get all the variables on one side. So either subtract 3m or add by them. And then solve. Precious, make sure you're writing this down. Make sure you're writing this down. Do we have any other questions about that? The review jumps to objective 4, so we can do 2 of these, one of the ands and one of the ors.
7 for and
Okay.
8 for fine.
So that shows one of each. For the ands, it's all condensed together. And you're trying to solve it all together, trying to get the variable out of the middle or by itself. So you would get rid of everything else. Subtract 3 to all sides. Divide everything by -6. Because we're dividing by a negative, all the signs are going to switch directions. But we want to write this least to greatest with less than or less than or equal to. So we're going to take this whole thing and flip it. So that would be your answer. And then to graph it, we're going to start at -6 with an open circle, end at 1 with a closed circle, with a line in between. Before we do 8, what questions do we have on that one? Precious.
So one of them for the -6 and one of them you have a line in there for that.
That's just how it was. Yeah, bring those down. So why should we flip it? It always needs to be less than or less than or equal to. Okay, and then 8, you are solving these two things separately. I'm going to rewrite them so I have more space. If you rewrite them, make sure you bring down everything. I think a lot of what happened last time is we forgot like the 2 or the 1 at the end. And then you're solving it separately. So for this one, I'm trying to get variables on one side, constants on the other. So let's say I subtract 2b and then add 5. You have b is greater than or equal to 7. And that's it for that one. But then you could solve the other. Let's say I do something similar, subtract 2b from both sides, add 1. You could leave it like this, or if you wanted to switch it around, you could. Make sure it's pointing in the same direction towards or away from b as it was before. Put or in between it. That would be your answer. Your or inequalities graph apart. So b is greater than or equal to 7 would be closed, going to the right. B is less than -4 would be open to the left. What questions do we have on this? They have to point away from each other. Ors have to point away from each other. Go on to the next page. So now it's going backwards in the review to objective 3, your parallel perpendicular lines. Which of those do we want to see you go over?
3.
Okay.
4.
Also do 4, because that one's different than that one. Any of these? Okay. 5 and 6 are both parallel, so we won't do both, but we can do 7. Okay, let's start with those. So to write the equation of any line that's parallel to the equation given. So of the one that's given, if it's parallel, the slope has to be the same. So it has to be 2. Then you're going to use that to write a new equation. So y equals 2x. The y-intercept has to be different. Someone give me a y-intercept. Sure. Plus 1 minus 7. As long as it's not plus 3, that works. Questions on that? 3, because it's an x equals, you have to remember your Hoybucks. This would have what type of slope? It's a vertical line, but what type of slope? Undefined. But in order for it to be perpendicular, it needs to be the opposite. So our new slope would be 0. So that means our new equation is going to be a y equals, no longer x equals. Someone give me a number. It can be the same, different, doesn't matter.
Sure.
Yes. Questions on that one? Next one is also perpendicular. So this one gives us a slope. We're going to take it and flip it. If it's negative, make it positive, and vice versa. So what would our new slope be? 5/4. So we would use that y equals 5/4x. Give me a y-intercept. It could be the same, it could be different, doesn't matter. Questions on that? Sure. As long as it's perpendicular, it can be the same. If it's parallel, it cannot be the same. 5 through 8, you need this formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is on the board as well. So for 6, it's parallel, so the slope has to be the same. So you can cross out everything else in that equation. You don't need it, that way it doesn't confuse you. So that would be your m. You are given x1 and y1 and have to put it into the formula. Y minus y1 is negative 2 equals our slope 1/5 times x minus x1 is negative 5. Before we do anything else, we have to make the minus negative a plus. And then after that, distribute. And our last step would be get y by itself, get rid of the 2 by subtracting. So that would be the line that is parallel to the original that goes through that point. What questions do we have on that process? 1/5 times x and 1/5 times 5. Okay. 7 is similar, except we have to change the slope. It was negative 1. What would our new slope be if we took it, flipped it, made it positive, positive 1? You can really cross out that entire equation. You don't need it. But now you have your slope You have x1, you have y1, and you can go on with the formula. Y minus negative 5 equals 1 times x minus negative 2. Make both of the minus negatives pluses. And after you do that, you could distribute on the right. And then your last step would be to get rid of the 5. By subtracting. So that would be the line that's perpendicular to the original that goes through that place. Any questions on that process? Go on to the next page. Actually, the next 2 pages are intercepts. You can find any from either page. It's front back, I think. What questions do you have on any of the intercepts?
29.
Okay. 43. 27. That basically covers all of the types. Alright, so 27, you are solving these for x or y intercepts, putting 0 in for whatever you're not solving for. So if I said I'm looking for the x-intercept, I'm putting 0 in for y. And then I'm going to start to solve. This is going to become 0, so I don't need to bring it down. I know it's going to disappear. I can move on to the next step and divide everything by half. Then I can use that and write it as an ordered pair. My x value is 6. I put 0 in for y, so that would be my y value. We would do the same thing for y, but opposite. Put 0 in for x now. That first piece would become 0. We can drop that off, bring down everything else. So then that would be your y-intercept. Your x value is 0. What questions do we have on that before we move on? Yes. Always 0 that you're putting in. Not at the same time, but one and then the other. 28, the easiest way to do this is to graph the 2 points given. So 3, 0, and 0, 2. You have to write an equation, so you need your slope and your y-intercept. Slope, you can look at the points and count down to the right 3. And then use that slope and the y-intercept to write your equation. Y equals negative 2 over 3x plus 2. Other questions on that one? '29, you're looking for your x and y intercepts. They happen to fall at the same place. They both cross at the origin. So your x-intercept would be 0, 0, and your y-intercept would be 0, 0. 43, again, look for where it crosses the x and y axis. So your y-axis crosses at 6. Your x-axis crosses at 12. Yeah. And those would be your answers. Go on to the next page. On the last 2 pages, so skip intercepts, go to factor, because we've covered all the intercept stuff. On the last 2 pages, they are different problems, but they both show the same type. So, of this first section or the second one, second page of that first section, which of those do we want to see do? We'll go through 2 of those. 13 on the first one. So that one has bigger numbers, so maybe find one that has smaller ones. So that would be both types of what you'll see for this section. So first, look and see, is there something we could divide each of these by? Some number that each have in common that we could divide them by? 3. What would that leave us with if we divided each by 3?
X squared plus 12x plus 36. And
Then we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to be 36, but add or subtract to be 12.
2 sixes.
So you're going to keep bringing down that 3 from the outside, and you're going to have 2 sets of factors. Whatever the variable is going to be what comes first in both, and the 2 numbers you found are going to go in each. Since these are the same, you could also write this as 3 times x plus 6 squared. Either or does not matter. Questions on this? $18. Is there something we can divide out of all 3? For 18. 1 works, but that wouldn't change anything. So then we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to be -2, that add or subtract to be -1. -2, +1. So then your 2 factors would have n first in both. Put in your 2 numbers, -2 plus 1. Do we have any general questions about that section before we move on? Questions?
So for this one, it doesn't have to be the highest one, because like, if you're calculating it, you often use 6.
For this?
You can't just 3 is the lowest number.
So had it been like 6 first, then yes. Right. In the bottom section on this page or the next, let's find one with bigger numbers and then one with smaller numbers. We'll do one of each. 22. So that's one with bigger numbers, one with smaller. Julia, 1 3 would work. 19 would also work for only 23. Alright, so starting with 22. Is there something we can divide each of these by? So you may have to think about the factors of each one. Like 40, you know, is 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 40. Think about all of those numbers. See if you can start dividing both of those by any of those. 5 wouldn't work. 4, I think, is the one. To divide that out of everything, so we have 10m squared plus, what was this?
57.
Minus, what was the last one? Then the rules are slightly different with this one because you no longer have 1 in front of whatever squared. So take the first and the last and multiply those together. And now you're looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 180, but also add to 857. Think about obvious ones before you start going through all of them, like 5 would work, 10 would work. Maybe start there and go up or down. Remember, if you don't know the factors of some number, you can start dividing 180 divided by 1, by 2,
60 negative
60, and negative 3 would work. Keep bringing down that 4. Your 3 terms split into 4 terms. The first and the last stay the same. And then you have the 2 numbers you've just found you put in the middle. Does not matter the order. Then you would split this down the middle and find what these two have in common that you could divide out. 10m, which would leave us with
m plus 6.
And then same thing on this side. What could we divide out of both?
3.
Negative 3. Which would leave us with m plus 6, which is what we want, those insides to be the same. Then you can rewrite everything as one answer. Keep bringing down that 4. 10m minus 3, the things on the outside get put together. And m plus 6. And that would be your final answer. What questions do we have on that process before we do this last one? So I imagine that if you know your factors, you wouldn't have to do this, but if you don't, you would just keep dividing until you figure something out. One of them have to be negative because it was negative 180. So if I do negative 3 plus 60, that gives me 57. Alright, last one, 23, so you'll have time to still do your quiz. Is there something we can take out, divide out of all 3? Besides 1? No. So multiply 9 and negative 8. And find 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 72, but add or subtract to be negative 14. Rewrite this into 4 terms. First and last stay the same. And then the middle 2 are the 2 numbers you just found. Does not matter the order. Split it down the middle. What do these first 2 have in common?
9.
9
X.
x. What would be left? We divided that out.
X minus 2.
And then what do these 2 have in common?
4.
Positive 4. leaving us with the same x minus 2. So we have 9x plus 4 as one of our factors, and x minus 2 as the other. Are there any other general questions that we have? As before, it is collaborative. This one is also open notes. So if you've been taking notes, you can use whatever notes you have to include your review. If you don't have notes, you can't use other people's. I said to review, guys. So go ahead and put your phone, smartwatches in a calculator pocket. Get out whatever notes you want to use. Not digital notes, only paper notes.
Oh, yeah.